100 engineers, experts in their field, stood frozen, mouths agape, watching in disbelief. The machine, a marvel of technology that had cost millions to build, had been malfunctioning for hours. Despite their combined years of experience, none could fix it. But then, a janitor walked in, cracked his knuckles, and within 1 minute, the machine hummed back to life. The room was silent. 100 engineers, experts, and the entire company had witnessed something that defied reason. How could this be? The hum of machinery that usually fills the vast, high-tech corporate manufacturing facility has turned to silence. An ominous stillness looms over the production floor. The centerpiece of the entire operation, a sophisticated, cutting-edge machine, is on the fritz. This machine is no ordinary piece of equipment. It's the heart of the factory's production line, a multi-million-dollar innovation designed to propel the company to the top of the market. But now, the once pristine machine lies idle, with flashing red warning lights and an angry, persistent beep that seems to echo through the expansive facility. The atmosphere is thick with tension as dozens of engineers and technical experts surround the machine, trying to figure out what went wrong. They're standing shoulder to shoulder, examining screens and checking various diagnostic tools. But despite their collective expertise, none of them can crack the code. A few of them have even attempted to restart the system, but the machine refuses to cooperate, making the situation even more urgent. Time is slipping away, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This malfunction is not just a technical glitch. It's a ticking time bomb for the company's future. The machine is integral to fulfilling a crucial contract. If it's not fixed by the end of the day, the company risks losing not only the contract but their reputation and, potentially, their place in the industry. The room is filled with the sound of rapid typing, murmurs of frustrated engineers, and the occasional loud exhale as they try to piece together what could be wrong. The tension in the air is suffocating. A collective realization is starting to settle over the group. No one knows what's causing the problem, and worse, no one knows how to fix it. The clock ticks down ominously in the background as the engineers, usually calm under pressure, begin to feel the weight of the situation. Every second counts. The pressure is on, and failure is no longer just an inconvenience. It's a catastrophe in the making. The stakes couldn't be higher. The machine, a technological marvel that took years to develop and millions to build, is the cornerstone of the company's current operations. It's not just any malfunction. It's a full-scale breakdown that threatens to cripple everything the company has worked for. The factory floor, typically a symphony of efficient production, is now eerily silent, with all eyes fixed on the broken machine and the engineers trying to solve the mystery. The company had secured a high-profile contract, one that promised to elevate them to industry dominance. But that contract, worth millions, hinges entirely on the performance of this single machine. Without it running, the entire order is at risk. The client is growing impatient, and every minute without a solution is a minute closer to losing the deal. Word has already spread to the boardroom, and executives are beginning to murmur about potential fallout, disastrous consequences for the company's reputation, its finances, and its future. In the control room, the air is thick with urgency. Engineers from every department are present: mechanical, electrical, software, and systems engineers, all working feverishly, trying to identify the root cause of the malfunction. Despite their specialized knowledge and extensive experience, the room is filled with a growing sense of unease. The tools and diagnostics they've used to solve countless issues before are now proving ineffective. Every second wasted feels like an eternity. The company's survival depends on their ability to resolve this issue. The pressure is palpable. Tensions are rising as the engineers begin to bicker over possible solutions, each one more desperate than the last. Some suggest tearing down the machine completely, but the clock is ticking, and the risks of causing further damage are too great. Others propose restarting the entire system, but that hasn't worked so far. Everyone knows that if the machine isn't fixed by the end of the day, they won't just lose the contract, they'll lose everything. Failure is not an option. The weight of the situation hangs heavily in the room. As the hours pass, the engineers feel the crushing reality of their failure creeping closer. What was once a job to them now feels like a fight for their livelihoods. Every minute that passes is a step closer to an irreversible disaster. They need to fix the machine, and they need to do it fast. The room is filled with the buzz of highly specialized minds, each one focused intently on the malfunctioning machine in front of them. These aren't just any engineers. They are the best and brightest in their fields. Years of education, countless projects, and a reputation for solving the most complex problems have earned them their place in this room. But now, for the first time in their careers, they are faced with a challenge that they can't seem to crack. First, we meet Alex, the lead mechanical engineer. A man in his late 30s, Alex exudes confidence, his sleeves rolled up, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He's worked on cutting-edge robotics and manufacturing systems for over a decade. He's built and dismantled machines that most people could only dream of understanding. But this machine had him stumped. He runs his fingers over the cold metal frame, muttering under his breath, as if he can will the machine to cooperate with his willpower. His pride in his expertise is evident. He's always been the one to get things done, but today nothing is working. Next is Nina, the electrical engineer. She's sharp, methodical, and has a mind that can unravel the most complicated circuitry. Having worked on various high-voltage systems and control panels, she's confident that the problem lies in the power system. But as she checks and rechecks the wiring, her eyes narrow with frustration. Everything seems perfect. The systems she's designed in the past were flawless. But this time, the wires just don't talk to her the way they used to. She shifts uneasily on her feet, beginning to feel the pressure of the ticking clock. Then there's Lucas, the software engineer. Young, brash, and always armed with a joke, he's the one who usually finds the quick, clever solutions. He's spent his career writing code for everything from self-driving cars to drone navigation systems. If anyone could find a software glitch that's causing the machine to malfunction, it's him. But today, his usual swagger is absent. The machine's operating system is a complex, multi-layered program, and despite his best efforts, the lines of code just don't seem to make sense. He types furiously on his laptop, but nothing happens. The machine continues to stand still, mocking him. Lastly, there's Maria, the systems engineer. She has a unique ability to see the big picture, how all the individual parts of a system come together to function as one. With a career built on managing complex systems, she's been the one called in to troubleshoot and optimize large-scale projects. She stands apart from the others, quietly observing the machine, trying to figure out if the problem is a systemic issue or something more fundamental. Her eyes dart between the engineers, her mind calculating possibilities, but she, too, is starting to feel the weight of uncertainty. Each of them, experts in their own right, is trying to piece together the puzzle. Their years of specialized training have prepared them for just about anything, but this is beyond them. The team has faced challenges before, but nothing has ever made them question their skills like this. They are highly educated, incredibly experienced, and deeply proud of their knowledge. Yet, as the minutes stretch into hours, they begin to realize something they hadn't anticipated. This machine's failure is beyond the grasp of even their combined expertise. Their confidence begins to crack, and with it, the realization sets in. This may be a problem they can't solve. Amid the chaos of flashing screens, frantic engineers, and urgent discussions, one figure stands almost unnoticed. James, the janitor, is quietly going about his work. Dressed in a simple, worn-out uniform, dark blue overalls, scuffed shoes, and a name tag that reads James. He blends in with the background. His job is simple: sweeping the floors, taking out the trash, and occasionally changing light bulbs. To most, he is invisible, just another cog in the corporate machinery. But there's something about him that catches the eye, something more than just his unassuming appearance. It's a quiet confidence, a sense of calm in the midst of the storm. While the engineers scramble to fix the machine, James moves with a deliberate, almost meditative pace, sweeping dust from the floor, picking up stray papers, and emptying trash cans. His movements are slow and precise, as if he is in no rush to get anywhere. At first glance, James seems like nothing more than a blue-collar worker, a man of few words. But there's a subtle energy about him that draws attention. He doesn't flinch when the engineers pass by him in a flurry of urgency. He doesn't join the discussions or offer unsolicited advice. Instead, he stays in the background, observing the chaos with quiet interest, a knowing smile occasionally playing at the corners of his lips. There's a history behind that smile, years of experience that go unnoticed by the engineers around him. He's been with the company for over a decade, and though his official role is that of a janitor, he's seen the inner workings of this machine and others like it more times than he can count. He's learned not from books or universities, but from decades of hands-on experience. His expertise comes not from theories, but from practical knowledge gained through years of working with his hands, fixing things no one else bothered to look at. As he pushes his mop across the floor, his eyes occasionally flicker towards the engineers, taking in their frantic efforts to troubleshoot the malfunctioning machine. He watches them from the corner of his eye, assessing their actions with the practiced gaze of someone who's seen hundreds of problems solved in real time. He's not a mechanical engineer, not an electrical wizard, not a software genius, but there's something about him, something innate, that makes him understand machines in a way that no one in this room does. He has fixed machines before, not with expensive diagnostic tools or advanced training, but with an eye for detail and a practical, down-to-earth approach. James has an instinct for what's wrong when something breaks. He doesn't need a fancy degree to know that sometimes the solution is simpler than it seems. Yet, despite all his wisdom, James remains the invisible man. The engineers are too wrapped up in their specialized knowledge to notice him. They see him as nothing more than the janitor, a lowly figure doing his job in the background. But James doesn't mind. He knows his place, and he knows something the engineers don't. Sometimes the solution isn't in the tools or the textbooks. It's in the details, the things people overlook. And for now, he's content to stay in the background, sweeping away the dust while the engineers continue their frantic search for a solution they can't find. But deep down, James knows that when the time comes, he will be the one to fix the problem. And he's in no hurry to let anyone know. The engineers are working at a frantic pace now, desperation beginning to cloud their judgment. The clock on the wall ticks away, each second amplifying the pressure mounting in the room. Alex, the lead mechanical engineer, paces back and forth, his mind racing. He's already run diagnostic tests twice. The results are the same, no clear faults. He grabs a wrench, crouching beside the machine, tearing off a panel, and inspecting the gears and cogs inside. His brow is drenched in sweat, but his hands remain steady. He's done this hundreds of times, but this time something feels different. He adjusts a few components, tightens a bolt here, and tries a reset. The machine sputters briefly, only to fall silent again. He slams his hand against the side in frustration. Nina stands at her console, running through the electrical connections once more. She double-checks the wiring, pulls up the schematic on her tablet, and traces the connections on the screen. Everything seems intact. The voltage is stable, the current is flowing as expected, and there are no shorts. But still, the machine refuses to cooperate. She holds her head in her hands for a moment, trying to process what could be wrong. The soft hum of the failed machine mocks her attempts. Lucas, the software engineer, is hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keys as he tries to troubleshoot the software side. He resets the system again, scanning the code for any potential bugs. The machine's firmware is up to date. The software appears perfect. He runs a system check, looking for corrupt files, bad configurations, or hidden errors. But there's nothing, just an infinite loop of failure. His eyes dart from screen to screen, his breath quickening. Every line of code seems fine, yet the machine refuses to function. The more he digs, the less he understands. Meanwhile, Maria, the systems engineer, tries to connect the dots. She's been reviewing the operational flow of the entire system, analyzing every interdependent process. She's cross-checking logs, running environmental tests, and ensuring that the machine's overall integration with the rest of the factory is intact. Nothing stands out. There are no unusual readings, no signs of systemic failure. The machine's systems are functioning perfectly, except for the one thing that matters, the core function. The tension in the room is palpable. Frustration begins to bleed into the engineers' words. Some start raising their voices, their tempers fraying. "I swear, if I have to reset this thing one more time," Alex mutters, slamming the machine panel shut. "We've done all the basics. We're missing something," Nina says, her voice tight with frustration. "I've checked every line of code," Lucas snaps, his face flushed. "There's no reason for this failure. The software should work." Maria sighs deeply, her face pinched with stress. "This doesn't make sense. The system should be running. We're overlooking something. I know it." The engineers glance at each other, exchanging anxious looks. Their usual confidence is slipping. They're starting to doubt themselves. Every method they've tried, every possible solution they've considered, is failing. Time is running out, and they're no closer to the answer than when they started. The clock ticks on, louder now, as if counting down to something irreversible. With every minute that passes, the stakes grow higher. The pressure becomes unbearable. They need to fix this and fast before the day is lost. And yet, in the midst of the escalating tension, one figure remains untouched by the storm. James, the janitor, continues his work in the background, sweeping the floor with a calm, methodical pace. His eyes flicker briefly to the chaos around him, but his attention never wavers. He sees the engineers' frustration. He sees their mounting panic. He doesn't say a word, but there's a quiet certainty in the way he moves, an understanding that the solution is closer than anyone realizes. The frustration in the room has reached its breaking point. The air is thick with tension, the once collaborative atmosphere now replaced by heated arguments and the bitter taste of failure. Alex, still kneeling in front of the machine, wipes his brow and stands up abruptly, his patience running thin. We need to dismantle it completely. We've tried everything else. Maybe there's something we're missing inside. His voice carries a mix of exhaustion and frustration. He's the lead engineer, the one everyone looks to for answers, but right now his confidence is faltering. He knows they are running out of time and out of options. Nina, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, shakes her head in disbelief. Dismantle it? Are you out of your mind, Alex? We don't have that kind of time. We'll risk breaking something else. We need a more calculated approach, not a full teardown. Her words are sharp, her usual calm demeanor now edged with impatience. She's seen problems like this before, but this one is different. Nothing makes sense. Her earlier certainty is now replaced by a creeping doubt. She looks over at the machine again, the blinking lights mocking her. Lucas, ever the quick thinker, offers his input, but his voice lacks its usual brash confidence. I don't know about you, but I'm about to lose my mind with this. I've checked every line of code, and the software is fine. If we don't reset it and hard reboot the entire system, we're just wasting time. He gestures wildly at the machine. The issue is somewhere deeper in the software. Maria, the systems engineer, is the last to speak up. She's been quiet, observing the arguments unfold, but the pressure is starting to show. We're all grasping at straws here. Each of you has a valid point, but none of it's working. We've tried everything, and the machine is still dead. Maybe it's not something we can fix, not with the tools we have. Her words hang in the air like a heavy weight. She's the realist, the one who often sees things logically. But even she's starting to doubt their ability to fix this. They've been at it for hours, and every attempt has only led them in circles. There's no breakthrough insight, no aha moment, just failure again and again. The room falls silent for a moment, the reality of the situation settling in. For the first time, there's a palpable sense of hopelessness. No one wants to say it, but everyone can feel it. They are out of ideas. Alex, who's been the driving force of this team, slumps back in his chair. His shoulders sag. We've done everything we can. I don't know what's left to try. Nina's face tightens with frustration. You're giving up? It's not giving up. It's the truth. Alex snaps back. His voice is strained, and for the first time, the uncertainty in his eyes is visible. We've exhausted all the resources at our disposal. I don't see how we can go any further without making things worse. Lucas, now sitting with his hands over his head, mutters under his breath. This isn't just a technical problem. Something's off, but we don't know what it is. And the clock's ticking. The engineers stand in a huddle, staring at the machine, completely at a loss. They have no more theories, no more plans. It's as if every move they make only deepens the pit they're stuck in. They can't understand what went wrong, and worse, they don't know how to make it right. For the first time in their careers, these experts are on the verge of admitting defeat. And with each passing second, the consequences of their failure grow darker. The contract is slipping away. The company's future is hanging in the balance. But nothing they do can bring the machine back to life. It's in this moment of despair that the silence is broken, not by one of the engineers, but by the soft, unhurried voice of James, the janitor. I think I might know what's wrong, he says, his words cutting through the tense atmosphere like a knife. The engineers turn, momentarily startled. It's the first time they've heard James speak during this entire ordeal. His presence had been nothing more than a background hum until now, but something in his tone catches them off guard. His calmness in the midst of the chaos, the simplicity of his words. It's almost absurd. James, you're not serious, right? Nina asks, her voice dripping with skepticism. James looks at her, unflinching, his face betraying no hint of doubt. I've been here long enough to see how this machine works. I know it better than anyone in this room. The engineers exchange skeptical glances, the weight of their frustration clouding their judgment. They've put in hours of work, tried every angle, and now the janitor is suggesting he has the answer? But despite the skepticism, there's something in his demeanor that gives them pause. They've failed, and he, who's been watching from the sidelines, seems to be offering something they've overlooked. And, for a brief moment, the room falls silent again, the tension hanging in the air thicker than before. The engineers continue to argue, their voices rising in volume as they try to outdo each other with theories and solutions that are no closer to the truth. The frustration in the room is palpable as their patience wears thin, and the clock ticks ever closer to the end of the day. Alex is still insisting on dismantling the machine, while Nina counters with caution, warning that they might break something. Lucas is advocating for a full system reboot, claiming it's the only chance they have, and Maria, who's been watching in silence, shakes her head in defeat. In the midst of all the noise and frantic energy, James, the janitor, remains eerily calm. He's been quietly sweeping the floor, occasionally glancing up at the engineers as they bicker. He knows his place in the hierarchy of this company. His job is to stay out of the way, to handle the mundane tasks that no one else wants to do. But something about this machine, something about this moment, seems to pull him in. The engineers' voices fade into the background as James, without a word, sets aside his mop and quietly walks over to the machine. His movements are deliberate, unhurried, almost as though he's on a mission. He doesn't stop to ask permission or even acknowledge the engineers as they continue to argue among themselves. He simply walks past them, his gaze fixed on the malfunctioning equipment. His hands move almost instinctively as he approaches the machine, fingers brushing over the cold metal surface. There's no hesitation in his actions. The engineers, caught up in their heated discussion, fail to notice him at first. But then, a soft sound, a click, draws their attention. James crouches down by the machine's lower panel, his hands effortlessly removing a small cover. The engineers, startled by the unexpected intrusion, fall silent for a moment. They watch, their expressions a mix of confusion and disbelief, as James begins to inspect the machine. For the first time, James speaks again, his voice steady and calm. It's not in the wiring. It's not the software. The problem is right here, he says, pointing to a small, seemingly insignificant part of the machine. It's a simple issue, a bypass valve that's stuck in the closed position. The engineers stare at him, incredulous. Alex is the first to break the silence, his voice tinged with disbelief. Wait, you're telling me that the whole machine's been down because of a valve? James nods. Sometimes the simplest things get overlooked when everyone's focused on the big problems. It's an easy fix, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll never find it. A mixture of astonishment and frustration crosses the engineers' faces. How could they have missed something so basic, something so fundamental? All their high-tech diagnostics, their advanced theories, their endless troubleshooting, it had led them nowhere. But James, the janitor, had identified the problem in mere moments. Without hesitation, James reaches into the machine's compartment and carefully adjusts the valve. With a soft hiss, the valve clicks open, and a small burst of air escapes. The machine, which had been silent for so long, stirs to life with a low hum. The lights on the panel blink back on, and the screens flicker to life, displaying the systems running smoothly. The room goes still. James steps back, crossing his arms casually as the machine comes to life before their eyes. The engineers are frozen in disbelief, their faces a mix of confusion, awe, and a touch of embarrassment. They had spent hours, working tirelessly and pushing the limits of their expertise, only to have the solution provided by someone they had dismissed as just a janitor. James doesn't bask in the moment, nor does he seek recognition. His job is done. His role, simple as it may have been, has been fulfilled. But the engineers can't shake the feeling that something just monumental happened. The quiet janitor, with no fancy degrees or high-tech tools, had solved the problem that had stumped them all. As the machine hums back to life, the engineers exchange glances, their pride bruised, their minds racing to process what just transpired. They were experts in their fields, yet they had overlooked the most basic solution. In a single, calm moment, James, the one person they never thought would have the answer, had solved the problem that had seemed unsolvable. The turning point had arrived. The machine was fixed, But in the wake of this unexpected solution, the engineers were left grappling with something even more profound, a humbling lesson that sometimes expertise is not enough. Sometimes the solution lies in the simplest of answers. The engineers are gathered in the control room, their faces etched with exhaustion. Hours of troubleshooting have yielded no results, and their frustration is reaching its peak. They've pored over every system, rechecked every wire, and rebooted the machine so many times it feels like they're stuck in an endless loop of failure. There's a tangible sense of defeat in the air, and the clock is ticking down with no answers in sight. As the engineers continue to argue and attempt their next futile approach, James, the janitor, stands silently in the background. He's been watching them all this time, moving through the room with quiet confidence, seemingly uninterested in the chaos around him. He's done his job, kept out of the engineer's way, but something about this moment compels him to speak up. Finally, with a calm, almost disinterested voice, he speaks up. "Would anyone mind if I took a look?" The room falls into an awkward silence. The engineers, already at the end of their tether, exchange glances. Alex, the lead engineer, is the first to respond. His face tightens, irritated by the suggestion. "You've been watching us try everything, and now you think you've got the answer?" Alex's voice carries a sharp edge, a mix of frustration and disbelief. He's worked his entire career to get where he is, and now the janitor, someone with no technical knowledge, thinks he can solve the problem that has stumped them all? The others remain silent, their skepticism written plainly on their faces. Nina raises an eyebrow, her arms crossed tightly, clearly unconvinced. Lucas snorts derisively under his breath, clearly thinking that the janitor's involvement is a joke. They've put their trust in sophisticated tools, expensive software, and years of experience, and now, after everything, someone like James is offering to step in? The moment stretches on, heavy with disbelief. But then, Maria, the systems engineer, speaks up, her voice a little more neutral. "We've tried everything. What do we have to lose?" The room falls quiet again. The engineers are reluctant, but Maria's words echo in the air. They've come to a point where they've run out of options. They're stuck. There's nothing left to do but entertain the possibility that someone, even a janitor, might have an insight they've missed. After a long beat, Alex lets out a sigh, rubbing his temples in exasperation. "Fine, go ahead, but don't waste our time." The engineers step aside, allowing James to approach the machine. There's a palpable sense of disbelief hanging in the air. The janitor, who's never been part of the technical team, now stands in front of the machine that has confounded them for hours. He doesn't look like someone with any answers. His uniform is simple, worn out, and he doesn't carry any diagnostic tools. No fancy gadgets or instruments. He's just a man who cleans floors, takes out the trash, and fixes the occasional light bulb. Yet, despite all this, the room watches in tense silence as James walks over to the machine with the same quiet confidence he's shown all day. The engineers are skeptical, but they can't help but watch closely, curious if he'll even be able to make sense of it. James doesn't rush, doesn't fumble. He simply stands there, quietly assessing the situation, like he's seen it all before. The engineers exchange uneasy glances, still unsure of what to expect. Alex shifts his weight from foot to foot, his irritation simmering beneath the surface. He wants to laugh it off, but he knows he can't afford to dismiss any possible solution. He crosses his arms, watching as James moves calmly, almost nonchalantly, toward the machine. In the stillness of the room, the hum of the malfunctioning equipment seems to grow louder, more oppressive. Time is running out, but the janitor is unbothered by the ticking clock. He simply takes a deep breath, and with a steady hand, he reaches toward the panel of the machine. James steps up to the machine with a quiet calmness that feels almost out of place in the tense, frantic environment. The engineers, their frustration boiling over, fall silent as they watch him. There's no rush in his movements, no sign of anxiety or hesitation. He approaches the machine as if it were just another routine task, as if it's just another day in the factory. His hands move deliberately, each action purposeful, as if he's been here before, as if he's seen this exact problem countless times. His fingers graze over the cold metal, tracing the edges of panels and components with familiarity. The engineers exchange uneasy glances. Alex clenches his jaw, skeptical but unwilling to dismiss the janitor completely. Nina crosses her arms, watching with an air of disbelief. They all had spent hours analyzing the machine, scrutinizing every inch, and now, here's this janitor with no formal training, no technical background, calmly inspecting the same system. James doesn't look to anyone for guidance. His gaze is fixed on the machine, his focus unwavering. He mutters under his breath, almost to himself, as he inspects the intricate gears, the wiring, the valves. It's unclear if he's talking about the machine or just thinking aloud, but his voice is steady, almost soothing in contrast to the tension around him. The engineers, though skeptical, can't help but listen in. Sometimes, it's the little things that people miss, he murmurs. Too much focus on the big stuff blinds you to the small details. There's something about the way he speaks, without hurry, without any hint of pressure, that makes the engineers feel as though the world has slowed down. Time, which had been moving at a frantic pace for the engineers, seems to stretch and contract in James' presence. His confidence is not loud or boastful. It's not driven by ego or the need to prove something. It's a quiet certainty, like a man who has learned to trust his own intuition over years of experience. As he examines the machine, James shifts a small panel, revealing a component that no one else had noticed before. It's a tiny valve, hidden behind a protective cover, a valve that, in all the engineer's haste, had been overlooked. His hand hovers over it for a moment before he adjusts it gently. The engineers, still watching intently, can't understand what's happening. They've checked this machine a dozen times, used all their diagnostic tools, but James' actions seem effortless. His understanding of the machine doesn't come from the manuals or the blueprints. It's something deeper, a connection built not from theory, but from years of hands-on experience. James looks back at the engineers, catching their confused stares. He doesn't say a word, but the corners of his mouth twitch into a small, knowing smile. He steps back, out of the way, his task seemingly complete. The machine, which had been silent for hours, suddenly stirs. A soft hum fills the room as the systems begin to reboot, lights flickering on one by one. For a moment, there's no sound except the machine's gentle hum. The engineers are frozen, unable to comprehend what just happened. Alex is the first to speak, his voice low, tinged with disbelief. How did you know? James doesn't offer an explanation. He simply shrugs, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. Sometimes the solution's not in the wires or the code. Sometimes it's just seeing what everyone else missed. The engineers, still in shock, stare at the machine now running smoothly. The impossible has happened. What they couldn't fix after hours of effort, James, the janitor, has repaired in mere minutes. As the machine hums back to life, the room fills with an uncomfortable silence. The engineers stand there, humbled, their pride deflated, while James quietly returns to his cleaning duties, as though nothing extraordinary had just occurred. The room is still, a heavy silence hanging in the air. The engineers, standing at the edge of the control room, watch James with wide eyes. Their minds are racing, still struggling to process the fact that the janitor, someone with no formal technical training, has approached the machine with nothing more than calm confidence, and now, in a matter of moments, has fixed what they couldn't. James' hands move with deliberate precision, not hurried but confident, as he reaches for a small panel hidden beneath the machine's interface. He presses a few buttons on the control system, his fingers sliding across the surface like someone who has done this many times before. He adjusts a lever, barely noticeable, and pulls another small lever, hidden beneath a cover that none of the engineers had thought to check. The room holds its breath. For a brief moment, it's as though time stands still. Then, the machine begins to hum. The familiar whirring sound returns, faint at first, but growing steadily louder. The engineers watch, their eyes fixed on the now operational machine, blinking in disbelief. The lights on the control panel flicker back on, one by one, as the system reboots and the various screens display a steady flow of data. The machine is alive again. The soft mechanical hum fills the room, and it's as though the entire facility is breathing a collective sigh of relief. The engineers remain frozen in place, their minds struggling to grasp what has just occurred. They had spent hours using every advanced tool at their disposal, scrutinizing every connection, every line of code, every piece of hardware. They had even argued, dissecting theories and chasing their tails with no success. But James, with no more than a few simple, methodical adjustments, has made the impossible happen. There's no immediate celebration, no cheers, no applause, just stunned silence. The engineers stand there, mouths agape, eyes glued to the now functioning machine. They exchange uncertain glances, each one of them struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they've just witnessed. Alex, the lead engineer, is the first to move. He slowly walks toward the machine, his face still a mixture of awe and disbelief. His usual confidence is gone, replaced by an almost childlike curiosity. He inspects the machine closely, almost as though he's waiting for it to stop working again, for something to go wrong. But it doesn't. The machine is operating as it should. I don't understand, Alex mutters under his breath, his voice shaky. What did you do? James, standing a few feet away, looks over at him with a simple shrug. It's all in the details, Alex. You were all so focused on the complex parts, the wires and the code. But sometimes, it's the small, overlooked things that matter the most. The engineers stand speechless, processing his words. There's a deep sense of humility settling in, humility for their failure, and for the realization that the answer was right there, under their noses all along. They had been so caught up in their own specialized knowledge, in their own expertise, that they had missed the obvious. Nina, still standing near the back, finally speaks up. But, you don't even have a degree in this. You're just the janitor. How could you know? James smiles faintly, his gaze still on the machine. Sometimes it's not about degrees or credentials. It's about experience and paying attention to what others overlook. I've been here long enough to know this machine inside and out, even if I'm not the one designing it. Maria, the systems engineer, steps forward now, her usual composed demeanor shaken. You're saying all of this was caused by something as simple as a stuck valve? That's right, James confirms, his tone steady. You all were focused on the complexity. I just looked at what was missing. The solution was simpler than any of you thought. The engineers fall silent again, each of them turning the realization over in their minds. Their pride in their own expertise has been shattered, but it's not a bitter blow. Instead, they feel a quiet sense of admiration for the janitor, the one who has just taught them a lesson they will never forget. Alex, after a long pause, extends his hand toward James. Thank you, he says, his voice genuine. We were lost. We didn't see it. James accepts the handshake without fanfare. It's no problem, he replies simply. Just doing my job. The engineers stand around the machine for a few more moments, the weight of the situation sinking in. They can feel the hum of the machine as it resumes its operation, a stark contrast to the tension-filled silence that had gripped the room just moments ago. In the end, the engineers may have had the degrees, the tools, and the credentials, but James, the janitor, had something they didn't, a quiet confidence born of experience, a practical understanding that sometimes the simplest solution is the one everyone overlooks. As the engineers return to their work, heads down in quiet reflection, James slips out of the room, his presence no longer felt. He returns to his cleaning duties, his day seemingly unchanged, but the lesson he imparted lingers in the air, a hum of its own, echoing in the minds of the engineers who will never look at a problem the same way again. The engineers stand in stunned silence, still processing the sudden turn of events. The machine, once a symbol of their frustration, is now humming smoothly, its systems running perfectly. The engineers exchange incredulous glances, unable to comprehend what just happened. James, the janitor, remains calm and composed, standing off to the side, as if this were just another day at the office for him. Finally, after a moment of reflection, Alex, the lead engineer, looks over at him, his voice filled with both confusion and curiosity. James, can you explain what happened? How did you know? What did you do? James, still as unassuming as ever, meets Alex's gaze without a hint of arrogance. There's no boastfulness in his demeanor, no satisfaction in his voice, just a quiet, straightforward response. It was a small fix, something no one had noticed. The system was looking for a signal from a valve that hadn't been updated properly. The machine's software had been expecting a new setting, but the hardware wasn't aligned with that expectation. He pauses for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. The valve was stuck in the closed position, and that small detail was causing a system-wide malfunction. You were all focused on the complicated parts, the wires, the code, the complex diagnostics, but no one checked the basic, mechanical components that could affect the software. Alex, still trying to process James' words, takes a deep breath. You're telling me all of this was because of a valve? James nods calmly, his eyes not leaving the now operating machine. Yes, the machine was trying to do what it was designed to do, but it couldn't. The system was waiting for feedback that wasn't coming. A simple fix, but a critical one. The software was fine, the wiring was fine, the components were mostly fine, but without that valve working properly, the entire system would remain down. The engineers exchange another round of bewildered looks. Nina shakes her head, trying to grasp what just happened. But how could we have missed that? We checked every system. We ran every diagnostic tool. James shrugs, a small, almost apologetic smile tugging at his lips. Sometimes the big problems distract you from the small ones. Everyone was so focused on the machine's complexities, no one bothered to look for the simplest solution. It wasn't an issue with the high-tech parts. It was a mechanical failure, something small, something overlooked. The engineers stand frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. It was so simple. They had spent hours delving into the intricate systems, trying to fix something that, at its core, was just a minor issue. A small, overlooked mechanical detail that could have been fixed in minutes. Maria, who had been silent until now, finally speaks, her voice quiet but filled with a mix of awe and embarrassment. We thought we had to solve it through our knowledge, our tools, our technology, but the answer wasn't in any of those. It was right in front of us the whole time. James nods, his expression gentle, as if he's been here before. Sometimes the simplest things get missed in the pursuit of perfection. And sometimes you need to step back and see the problem for what it really is. It's not always the big, flashy solutions that work. It's the small, often overlooked details that hold everything together. The engineer's eyes widen in realization. Alex rubs his face in disbelief, trying to process the enormity of the lesson he's just learned. We were so busy trying to fix what we thought was broken, we didn't even consider what might have been working perfectly the whole time, just waiting for that one thing to be adjusted. James, without a hint of pride, simply nods. Exactly. For a few moments, the engineers stand in stunned silence, the gravity of the situation settling in. They had been caught up in the idea of complexity, of advanced technologies and high-level problem-solving, while the answer was hidden in plain sight, a simple mechanical issue that had been overlooked. And it had taken someone who wasn't bogged down by the same layers of expertise and theory to notice it. Alex breaks the silence, his voice quieter now, tinged with newfound humility. We were so focused on the technical details, we forgot to see the basics. The simplest answer was right there. We missed it. James simply smiles again, his face reflecting no satisfaction, just a quiet understanding. It happens, but that's how you learn, right? The engineers nod slowly, humbled, their pride in their expertise now tempered with the recognition that they had missed the most basic solution. The machine is fixed. The problem is solved. But in the process, they've learned a lesson they'll never forget, a lesson in humility, in paying attention to the details, and in remembering that sometimes the smallest of fixes can make the biggest difference. As they gather around the now functional machine, they all share a quiet sense of gratitude for the janitor who, in just a few calm, decisive actions, had shown them what they had failed to see. The room is eerily quiet, save for the steady hum of the now operational machine. The engineers stand in a loose cluster around it, their faces a mixture of disbelief and deep introspection. Alex, usually the leader, stands with his hands on his hips, staring at the machine as though he's seeing it for the first time. His usual air of confidence is gone, replaced by a quiet humility. They had all been so sure, so certain that their years of advanced training, their cutting-edge tools, and their specialized expertise would solve the problem. But none of it had worked. Hours had been spent, and yet it was the janitor, James, with no formal training, no high-tech gadgets, and no fancy degrees, who had solved it in a matter of minutes. Nina shifts uncomfortably, her arms crossed tightly. She can't seem to tear her eyes away from the now-functioning machine, the solution so simple that it feels almost ridiculous. She spent years learning complex systems, diagnosing advanced machinery, and overseeing the most intricate repairs. Yet, here she is, standing in front of a machine that had been fixed by something as basic as adjusting a small valve. The pride she had always felt in her expertise now feels hollow, as if it were a house of cards that could crumble with the slightest breeze. Lucas is the first to speak, though his words come out in a low, almost defeated tone. I don't know what to say. We were all so focused on the code, on the wiring, the complex diagnostics, but we missed the simplest thing. He rubs his hand across his face, still unable to comprehend how they had overlooked something so fundamental. His mind races back to all the diagnostic tools he'd used, the systems he'd reprogrammed, the countless hours spent analyzing data. And yet, all of it had led to a dead end. It was a minor, mechanical detail, something so basic that it seemed beneath their expertise. Maria, who had been observing the silence, finally speaks up, her voice soft but carrying the weight of the unspoken truth. We were so caught up in our own knowledge, in the tools we had, the systems we were trained to use, that we forgot the most basic thing. The real solution wasn't in the high-tech fixes or the fancy equipment. It was in something simple, something we didn't even think to check. Her voice falters slightly, the realization hitting her with a quiet intensity. The lesson is harsh, one that she, too, will carry with her. James didn't rely on the advanced systems they used. He didn't have access to the same high-tech tools, nor did he need them. He simply used practical, hands-on experience to identify the problem, a lesson born not from textbooks or years of formal education, but from being present, observing, and learning through trial and error. The engineers turn toward James, but he remains unfazed, standing quietly in the background, cleaning his mop handle with no fanfare, as if this was just another day at work for him. His quiet confidence is now more apparent than ever. He had done what none of them could. He had found the answer not in complex theories, but in simple, practical wisdom. Alex steps forward slowly, his face still carrying a mix of disbelief and something deeper, humility. You didn't even hesitate. You just knew. James looks up at him, his expression calm but knowing. Experience teaches you to look at the small stuff. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, but the little things are what keep it all running. You can't forget the basics. They're the foundation of everything. There's no arrogance in his tone, no satisfaction from having proven himself right, just a quiet understanding, the kind that comes from years of experience that no textbook can teach. The engineers, now humbled, stand in silence, absorbing the weight of what James has said. They had been so consumed with their own expertise, their advanced knowledge, that they missed the very thing that would have saved them hours of frustration. The answer wasn't in the tools or the systems they used, it was in the fundamentals, the hands-on experience that James had. For a long moment no one speaks. The lesson, unspoken yet clear, hangs in the air. It's a lesson in humility, in the importance of keeping the basics in mind, and in the value of practical experience over theoretical knowledge. As the engineers return to their respective tasks, the air feels different. They move with a renewed sense of awareness, no longer arrogantly relying on their advanced expertise, but with a newfound respect for the simple, the practical, and the often overlooked details that can make all the difference. James, however, returns to his work as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. He's done what he was meant to do, solve the problem not for glory or recognition, but simply because it needed to be done. And in doing so, he's given the engineers a lesson they will carry with them for the rest of their careers. A lesson that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful. The news of the janitor's astonishing fix spreads through the company faster than wildfire. It's not just the engineers who are talking about it. Soon, employees from every department are whispering about the improbable solution that saved the day. James, the janitor, has become an unlikely hero in the eyes of many, though he remains blissfully unaware of the ripple effect his quiet act of wisdom has caused. In the control room, the engineers sit in their chairs, staring at their monitors, but their minds are elsewhere. They are deep in thought, each one replaying the events over and over, trying to make sense of the experience. Alex, the lead engineer, taps absent-mindedly at his keyboard. His mind is far from the work in front of him, his thoughts instead on the small, seemingly insignificant valve that had caused the breakdown. Nina leans back in her chair, arms folded, her gaze fixed on the now-silent machine. The memory of watching James casually solve what they couldn't is still fresh in her mind. She started to see the whole situation differently. Perhaps it's time to step back, simplify her approach, and reevaluate how she looks at problems. Lucas is quiet, staring blankly at the screen, his mind racing with a mixture of frustration and humility. How had he missed it? He had spent hours combing through lines of code, rechecking every program, and yet the solution had been mechanical, right in front of him. The sting of embarrassment still lingers, but so does a new understanding. Maybe, just maybe, he needs to approach future problems with more patience and less reliance on high-tech solutions. Maria, who had always been the calm and composed one, feels a weight lifting from her shoulders. She, too, is humbled, and with that humility comes clarity. The lesson James imparted isn't just about checking the basics, it's about slowing down and listening. The complex world they live in often encourages speed, efficiency, and complexity, but in doing so, they miss the simplicity that can sometimes be the key to solving even the most complicated problems. The engineers may be humbled, but they are also beginning to rethink their approach to problem solving. The tools they've relied on, the systems they've built their careers around, these things are important, but they are not infallible. The unexpected can happen, and sometimes, the answers lie in the unspoken wisdom of someone who sees things from a different perspective. As for James, the janitor, his life continues on as it always has. The whispers about his quick fix and his unassuming brilliance follow him, but he remains unfazed. He quietly returns to his duties, as if nothing extraordinary has occurred. He sweeps the floor, mops the hallway, and carries out his work with the same calm diligence he's always had. There is no grand recognition, no celebratory meeting, no applause for the janitor who saved the day. And James wouldn't have it any other way. For him, it's not about the fame or the credit, it's about solving the problem and moving forward. He's content in the knowledge that his practical, hands-on experience has made a difference, even if no one outside the engineer's inner circle fully understands the magnitude of the lesson he's imparted. The engineers, on the other hand, are left to grapple with their own reflections. They walk back to their desks, each of them carrying a quiet sense of humility. They now know that sometimes the most powerful solutions come not from the latest technology or the most complex theories, but from simplicity, patience, and paying attention to the little things. And as the workday continues, the lesson of the janitor lingers in the air. It's a lesson about humility, about revisiting the basics, and about the value of practical experience over theoretical knowledge. The engineers have learned that they don't always have to be the smartest or the most sophisticated to solve a problem. Sometimes, the solution is found in the most unexpected places, and from the most unlikely sources. As for James, he carries on with his work, doing what he does best, quietly, and without fanfare, making sure everything runs smoothly. The company may have forgotten his name by the end of the week, but the engineers will never forget the lesson he taught them. It's a lesson that will stay with them forever, one that will shape the way they approach problems and solutions moving forward. As the hours pass and the machine hums steadily, the company's production line begins to resume its normal rhythm. The engineers, though still somewhat shaken by the events of the day, are hard at work once again. The crisis that had threatened the company's future has been averted, and the crucial contract is saved. The order will be fulfilled, and the client, impressed with the company's ability to recover from a major setback, remains satisfied. The janitor, James, continues his duties as usual, never once being asked to recount the details of what happened. He quietly goes about his work, sweeping the floors, mopping the hallways, and fixing the occasional light bulb. The engineers, who had been so caught up in their own specialized world, never think to ask him how he knew what to do. They never offer thanks or acknowledge his quiet contribution. But in a way, it doesn't matter to James. For him, the act of solving the problem was never about recognition, it was about doing what needed to be done. For the engineers, however, the real change happens within themselves. Alex, Nina, Lucas, and Maria begin to look at their work through a different lens. They no longer see their knowledge as infallible. They start to appreciate the value of simple solutions, the importance of stepping back and reconsidering their approach. The pride they once had in their technical expertise is now tempered with humility. They realize that sometimes the most complicated problems are solved not by the latest technology or the most complex theories, but by the most basic, fundamental solutions. They also begin to appreciate the quiet wisdom of the uncelebrated experts around them, the people like James, who may not have formal degrees or high-tech tools, but who possess an invaluable understanding of the practical realities of the world. In the future, they will approach problems with a more open mind, acknowledging that expertise in one field doesn't always translate to success in another. They will remember that sometimes, it's the simplest solutions that make the biggest difference. As the story concludes, the engineers, now forever changed by their humbling experience, reflect on the lesson that James unwittingly taught them. In a world that often places immense value on academic achievements, advanced degrees, and high-tech innovations, they now understand the power of practical experience, of learning through doing, and of appreciating the wisdom that comes from hands-on work. It's easy to get lost in the complexity of a problem and overlook the simplest solutions. But sometimes, the most valuable insight comes from the most unlikely sources. The person with the least academic qualifications may have the most practical knowledge, and in the end, it's that knowledge that can save the day. The engineers will continue to innovate, continue to push the boundaries of technology. But they will never forget the quiet lesson they learned that day, a lesson that will guide them in their future work. Sometimes, the most unlikely person can offer the most valuable solution. And for James, the janitor, life continues just as it always has. He is, as ever, a quiet observer, never seeking attention, never asking for recognition, but always contributing in ways that make a lasting impact.